On this episode, you'll learn how this emergency room physician who saw a need for her current patients in terms of their health turned this need into a reality, into a $90,000 a month coaching business. I'll be interviewing Dr. Heather Hammerstedt on this episode of Bootstrap MD. Hey guys, this is Dr. Mike Wiming with Bootstrap MD. From time to time, I like to highlight physician entrepreneurs. People are actually out there in the trenches, actually doing it. They're not waiting for a double-blinded placebo study to actually decide to venture into something. And I came across this wonderful physician who actually I was kind of intimidated because she was doing push-ups and sit-ups, and I know she could probably kick my butt. So I want to be very cognizant of her time, very, very respectful. But Heather Hammerstedt is a physician, emergency physician trained, and she's actually certified in lifestyle medicine, who decided many years ago to start up a business in helping people become better, improving their health and wellness. And she's been doing this for quite a while. You probably have heard her before if you've seen one of her videos. She's very active in social media. And I really wanted to know basically how she got started and how she was able to take that leap into becoming her own boss. So without further ado, Heather, thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I really appreciate it. And like I said, I am intimidated. So I got to be very cognizant because you definitely are, I saw those things. I go, I don't even know if I can even think about doing that. Some of those things that you're doing. She has her own health and wellness community. Obviously, walking the walk and talking the talk. And you're in Boise, Idaho, is where you are. You've got two, so the picture of your kids, beautiful children. You've got a stay-at-home husband. So I'm going to take you back when we're going to go in a little time machine back when. So when you were in emergency medicine, you had graduated from emergency medicine residency. When did you get this idea about starting your own business?
So I graduated from one of the Harvard emergency medicine programs in 2007, and I stayed there for a year and taught, and then got my master's of public health at Harvard as well, and started a nonprofit doing emergency medicine education in Uganda, which we still do. And that took up like a fair amount of my extra time for about a decade. And slowly, as our graduates have become their own teachers and their own administrators of our program, which is totally the goal, to work yourself out of a job, my role became smaller and smaller in the nonprofit. And around that same time, I started like having this 3 a.m. moment every day in the emergency department where I was like, this person does not need to be here. This could have been prevented. This person, if we had gotten them 10 years ago or 5 years ago, we could have, not had to be on dialysis, not had a myocardial infarction, like not have a diabetes complication. And I've put my hand up for all sorts of things over the years. Studied Ayurveda. I studied medical acupuncture. I actually got my health coaching certificate while I was still in medical school. All these things that I just didn't, I hadn't utilized. And I realized that I had all of this knowledge, and I have this idea of comprehensive health, teamwork around health, that I could take advantage of. And so I got the entrepreneurial itch about 2.5 years ago, and put together Wholist, which is basically a team-based approach towards whole person care, figuring out how we can use the evidence behind lifestyle medicine, which is food and sleep and exercise and mindfulness, around the prevention and reversal of disease. And the way that we access that is through food, and helping people figure out what do they think about food, how do they use food, why are they using food the way that they are, how do they view their body, what's their self-story around what their body is and how they use it, and really rewiring their brain, and helping them use the what and when of eating to lose weight, but more importantly, to get to that sustainable long-term health.
Now, some, including myself, I've heard the term lifestyle medicine. We've seen conferences on it, but it's, at least for me, educate me. What exactly is lifestyle medicine? How would you define it?
Yeah, so lifestyle medicine really is kind of gathering the evidence that is out there in various spheres of not just medicine, but of health around the whole food, plant-based diet, around exercise, around the coaching model, and
Hmm.
around mindfulness, and how that affects long-term disease. It's really helping people do the things that we know that we need to do theoretically in terms of what we put in our body, how we move our body, and how we control our inner state, and how that actually in the evidence affects long-term health. And so it's not quite the same as integrative medicine, where you're using different modalities of non-conventional or alternative medicine in the same realm as conventional medicine. That's kind of integrative medicine. And functional medicine, they really dig into the kind of molecular ideas behind health. So digging down into kind of the smaller pieces of us that may eventually become your whole body. This is really using like, what are you eating? How are you moving your body? And how are you controlling your thoughts? And for me, that's really powerful, because those are things that I think we all understand that we need to do. But it's hard to get those sustainable habits into our life. And so that's what we do at Wholist, is help people do that.
And it seems like that type of medicine really fits well with the telemedicine type model. I mean, you
Yeah.
can basically do this, almost anywhere, correct?
Yeah, you certainly could. I do some lifestyle medicine telehealth in the states that I practice in, which is Idaho, Oregon, and California. But the primary way that we do this in Wholist is that we use a coaching model, which means that we are kind of holding the space for people to come up with a plan that's going to work with their life, and we help guide them to that. So we have a 12-week program where you can come in and you're assigned a personal food coach and a personal mindset coach. And those two people work on the what and the when of eating and the why of eating and really kind of get into the weeds with you on that. And so the primary part of Wholesome is that we're not really practicing medicine. Most of us are just doing coaching around that.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get in on that, because that's a question that I get a lot from my students about where is the line. So let me get to you. But before we do that, you mentioned that you got your certification in health coaching, previous to this. Were you doing that on the side and then decided to start the business, or did you just go full, let's do the business now and see what happens?
Yeah, so I went to medical school at Temple in Philly, and at the time there was an in-person program in New York City called the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. It's now an online program, but at that time I would take the train on a weekend up to New York and take this course, and it was really transformative to me, realizing this whole other part of health that people were talking about that was outside of medicine and all the things that I was learning while I was in medical school. But then residency started, right? And
Mhm.
life does not continue in
Right,
residency.
right. Everything gets pushed to the side for sure.
Exactly. So I didn't actually practice as a health coach for a very long time, and really until I got this idea to start this team-based approach to whole person care is when I really got back into coaching and digging back into what the coaching model is and how it's so different than the prescriptive model of medicine. So it's just been a few years. The coaches that I have working with me come from all over the place. So I have dietitians, I have nurses, and I have physicians, all of who practice in a coaching realm, some of them formally trained and some of them not formally trained.
So when someone has an idea for a business, they want to do something that's entirely new. And then you have others like myself who, see what other people are doing and then have our own USP or unique selling proposition that makes it unique. It's often more difficult to become, to create like an app, like an Uber that's completely transformative than to do something that's different. Did you look at other businesses? Because this sounds, pretty unique what you have there. Did you have mentors? How did you, get that idea to actually become, a reality?
I winged it. I think, being in emergency medicine, I'm not afraid to try something, right? I mean, we're pretty MacGyver in our specialty, and so what I did was I just grabbed a bunch of people who put their hand up and said that they wanted help with their food and their body and how their mind worked around food. And I just practiced on them and created something that along the way that was serving them. And I think that that was a good model for me because I don't know if I would have been able to know exactly what people needed in this realm unless I was working with them in real time. So creating a product and an idea ahead of time just didn't make sense to me. So I had, a beta group of people, and I realized that I was saying the same thing over and over again. And so what I decided to do was to create the program being mostly audio based. And so in the 12 weeks at this point, everyone gets an audio podcast from me every single day of the 12 weeks on either weight science or on mindset around food and metacognition around food. And so that kind of leads them at this point, like as a blueprint through the program. And then they have the personal coaching, the mindset coach and the food coach as a kind of support and accountability to help them use that information and to plug it into their specific roadmap of where they want to go. But that was it's just sort of happened that way because I realized in the emergency department, like if I could have a podcast that I gave someone on their chest pain rule out, every single night, it would save me so much time. Right. So that's really kind of how the basis of this program happened was just everyone needs to know this specific sort of information. And I just kind of winged it.
I love that. It's funny because, I've done some coaching with doctors for a while. They want to become entrepreneurs. Definitely one of the biggest specialties that come out is emergency room, or emergency physicians. And I thought it was because because you're in a time shift, you have that extra time to explore different activities. But I didn't think about the idea about the MacGyver and just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah, we're action takers, and
right.
We never know what's coming in the door at any moment. And so we have to be prepared for everything. And so I think for the most part, we're not quite so afraid of the unknown as other people do. And when I talk to mostly other female physicians at this point about business development, I'm always saying, you just have to take a step. It doesn't matter if it's a step in the wrong direction, action begets action, right? And so you don't always have to know what the future holds before you step out and do something.
Right. And oftentimes, as a doctor, certainly you're in the trenches. If you're making life and death decisions, if you're undecided about what color your website should be, blue versus red, probably not the biggest, issue that you have. But, I'm being facetious here, but oftentimes, I work with doctors who are just not ready to put themselves out there. You had mentioned that you had a beta group. Did you initially charge them, or was it free for your friends? How did that work?
I threw it out there as a New Year's Eve challenge a few years ago and collected some people for a very nominal amount of money. But I did charge, and I do think it's important, even in a beta group, to charge a small amount of money. It brings value to what you're doing from both sides. You realize that it's important because someone else is paying you for your time, and they realize it's important because they're putting something into it. But it was a small amount. But I do often advise that to people who are starting out. It's everyone always wants to do it for free, but it is still, you still are providing valuable service, even if you're experimenting on somebody.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because, recently I posted out something that, I charge, for my consulting services, but every now and then I do a free consultation, I hear their sob story and I really want to help them or maybe their friends. And I would say that for every free, let's say I give 10, maybe one person will actually take action on it.
Yeah.
And, it's the same advice that I give my paid clients, but they don't have any skin in the game. And oftentimes I feel you devalue your worth when you're giving something for free, and they just don't take it as important as someone who is, trying to get along, or saying, I'll just learn through YouTube videos or something like that. And it's like, probably the best way, I think, is having a mentor or coach to help you. I mean, that helped me. Did you have coaches that helped you out?
So I did not use coaching at the beginning. And that is one of my biggest regrets. I think that if I would do it over again, I would have invested in coaching for myself much earlier than I did. I just sort of thought like, well, I have a great idea and I have a great product and people are, being served by this and they're just going to come. But and I struggled for a long time. I invested a lot of money into failing forward and a lot of time and just, working for free basically for myself. And then I invested into first a marketing coaching company, and then I invested into a business coaching company, and then invested into a sales coaching company. And those serial investments for me over the last now 9 months have gotten me from $5,000 revenue month to this month's probably 90.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. So let's talk about, well, actually, before we do that, I want to get this question out. So we've talked about, there are these doctors, they're hearing about these health coaches. You and I both know health coaches who are making, 6 figures a year as a health coach. They're not physicians, but, they are very passionate, and I'm sure that they get the results. And so there's been this, I've seen a big demand in doctors wanting to become health coaches, certainly now with, more people are getting on Zoom calls, telemedicine, because of what we're going through right now. And there's a lot more people are open to education online. That being said, there are a lot of doctors who don't know what, and I would like to be educated as well, is what is the line? You make a clear distinction between you're not practicing medicine, you're in the coaching model. Explain that to me, and how did you come up with that determination?
So, you ask 6 lawyers, you get 6 answers. And so I'm not a lawyer and I can't, provide exactly what that line in the sand is for the listeners. I can give you my opinion. My opinion is that it is coaching is very different than medicine. In coaching, you are providing information, and you are meeting someone exactly where they are in their kind of varying states of ability to understand where they want to change. And you are helping them come up with a plan on how they want to move forward. In medicine, we are prescribing and telling people what to do. They're very, very different. So I think that the coaching model is exceptionally useful for physicians to learn, regardless of what you're doing, to be able to help your patients make sustainable change. Because otherwise they're doing this while you're telling them what to do and nodding their head, and they're not going to do it. So I think it's really important to learn that model. Caveat to my addition to that is that I do have a lifestyle medicine online course where I teach people how to do this. So that's not the only reason why I'm saying that it's important to learn how to do. So there's that. I think, so they're very different. And I do think that having some specific certification and training in this is important for physicians, because number one, it helps you learn how to do it appropriately and safely for the patient. But secondly, also has you have another hat where you can be like, I am a doctor and I'm practicing medicine here. My other job is I am a health coach and I am coaching over here. Whereas if you don't have that formal certification, it gets wavy, right?
Yeah. Very blurred. Sure.
Of what you're doing and when. So that's one piece of advice, is that if you're going to do it, definitely get a certification so that you can you can say what distinct role that you're playing. And then you need to have like very clear waivers in terms of services that says what your scope is during that relationship. And so I have very clear, papers that everyone signs that says, I understand I'm not receiving medical advice. This is not a medical relationship. This is, I'm forming a relationship with a coaching company. And I think that is very important. There are going to be lawyers that tell you that regardless of if, what all of those things that you do, that you're taking a risk because you're a physician, and that those lines are blurred. And I get that. I don't think that me being a physician, however, encompasses my entire being. I think that there is, a chance for me to be something else. And in that case, this case, it's CEO of Wholist, and it's a health coach. And I think that if you take the appropriate risks to have those papers, sign that, be very clear with your clients, and also have coaching insurance and also have medical malpractice insurance, then I think you're as safe as you're going to be.
Thank you. And if you'd like, we can have a link to your course, in our show notes. That would be good for you, for those who want to find more information. This is really good stuff because, like you said, there's 6 different attorneys tell you 6 different things. All 6 will take your money.
Yeah.
And tell you
a lot of it.
Tell you want to hear, but someone who's actually been there and done that's really important advice. So talk me through about Wholist. You mentioned it, but we didn't really get into kind of the nitty gritty. It's a 12-week program, and explain how it all works.
Yeah. So basically, people get on the phone with me or one of my strategy coaches, and we sit down with you even before you've decided to come into the program for about an hour and really dig into how you use food, what your body's like, what you want it to be like, what you're really, what is affecting all of that, because weight is so complicated. It's such a hormonal dysregulation problem with insulin and cortisol and dopamine and serotonin and our leptin and ghrelin, and our adipose tissue actually makes hormones on its own. And so really kind of figuring out where all the pieces is coming in from everybody. So when we have that conversation and decide that someone is a good fit to come in and work with us and they're ready to take action towards their long-term health, we bring them in and we assign them to 2 coaches. One is a food coach, one is a mindset coach. And they plug in every Monday and they start getting podcasts on weight science and mindset around food. And that, again, is just sort of a blueprint that leads them through those 12 weeks where they really can understand really the evidence behind how their body works with food and how their brain works with food. Because, I am just really passionate about people understanding that about themselves, so that these choices that they make every day is less about the number on the scale and more about understanding how their body and brain works. And that way it becomes much more sustainable in making those choices. So educating them that way, and then having that support and accountability with their coaches. The food coach, her job is to really, we have an app on your phone where you just take a photo of your food. We're not counting anything because MyFitnessPal is 100% not sustainable for life, right? Yeah. But you're always going to be looking at your plate and what's on your food. And so take a picture of your food and it goes to your coach, and then you meet her on a video call once a week to really dig into what worked and what didn't work. And if you're showing up to that call and you're saying, I lost 3 pounds, but more importantly, my sleep was better and I was less irritable and I had great energy and I felt satisfied with my food, then you know the what and the when of that plate is serving you. The mindset coach, his or her job is to really dig in with you about, your relationships, your work situation, your relationship with food, the way you use food as a child, all of those things to figure out what are your thoughts. Because if you can control your thoughts, then you can control your feelings and your actions, and you get different results. But if you are not aware of what that story is in your brain around why you use food and how you view yourself and your value, then you're never going to get different results. And so those mindset coaches are everywhere between a neurologist to a hypnotherapist to a physician who's a life coach. So we have tons of different options to really curate a really terrific team for someone depending on what they need and where they are.
I read somewhere that you call yourself a health curator. Explain it to me.
Well, I mean, that's what it is, right? It's like it's figuring out exactly what that specific person needs, because the way that you use food and the way that you use your body and the way that you think about yourself and is entirely different than me, right? And so we
Mhm.
have the same physiological processes, but they've been turned on their head depending on what our experiences are. And so I think finding the right people to work with each individual to really get them where they need to go is curating that team. And I have like a bigger idea for Wholist of like having little pockets of us all over the place where you have, you know, not just the mindset and the food coaches, but you have who needs an acupuncturist, and who needs who needs this type of kinesiologist, and who needs what in your community, and try to pull together even a bigger team than what we're currently doing.
Dr. Heather's going to take over the world, and you're here to her first here. So you're still working though as an ER doc, is that right? And
Yeah.
doing the business
Yeah.
full time?
Well, yeah, I have been working full time.
Wow.
The new news is that I am cutting back to part time this summer, which is really exciting.
Right, right. And being full time mom, obviously. You mentioned
Yeah,
you have a stay at home husband.
I do. He's amazing. He's our chef. He's our everything. So Wholist and my East Africa work and emergency
Okay.
medicine and parenthood, we wouldn't be able to do any of it without him. That's for sure.
So are you his boss too?
I do send some marketing money his way because he does all of our cooking and I use it for marketing. So
Very, very cool. You mentioned marketing, and I'm always interested. How do they find out about you? Are you doing a lot on social media? Is it word of mouth?
yeah, so I would say probably 75% of our revenue comes from social media. So I have a really well functioning funnel that I set up that basically goes from Facebook ad, Instagram ad, to webinar, to scheduling a call, and that's been converting really well. And it took a lot of work and a lot of failure for that to find one that really worked. But I would say probably 75% of our revenue comes from that. And then the other 25% is mostly, organic social media work, in terms of reaching out and people seeing what we do by what we post, and, what our content is. And my Facebook group, it's Curate Your Health is my Facebook group, and a fair amount comes out of there as well.
And I alluded to the past that, there's videos of you working out that you have on there. Was that a conscious decision? Was that something that you're very comfortable with, or was there some hesitation to do that?
Yeah, I mean, me on social media 3.5 years ago versus now is like an entirely different being, right? Like I have definitely embraced walking the walk and being vulnerable, and realizing that if people don't want to see what I'm doing, that they can just keep scrolling, and that I'm going to be my biggest critic. And so I feel it's important that people realize that it takes work to be healthy. And so I try to use my stories primarily to just demonstrate what real life works like. And that means hanging out with the kids. That means it's riding the Peloton. It means it's exercising in my office. It means it's me on the computer taking coaching calls. It means it's me wearing a mask at 3 a.m. Right. And so I want people to realize that, like, life is life, and it's hard work, and that you can do it if you commit to it.
It was funny. I was going to ask you what a typical day looked like, but I think you just kind of summed it up right
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
That was
exactly.
probably in the last 2 hours. If you were to give advice to, let's say, a doctor who wants to start an online business, uh, what advice would you give them?
Um, I
Easy
think,
question.
yeah, I think going in with your eyes open. I mean, to be like entirely transparent, I probably sunk $50,000 into this company in the first year and worked 2 full-time jobs to do it. And the next year barely broke even. And I think, and now it's like, now that it's flying, it's like, that was totally worth it, but you just don't know that at the time.
Yeah.
And just, you never know when the next step is going to mean success, which means you're either perpetually failing forward or you succeed the next day and you don't know which day that is. And for me, I'm just like super stubborn. And so it worked for me. So I think going into it with your eyes open, of realizing that it's going to take time and money. I think secondly, investing early and asking for mentored coaching help, I think is really important. The third is, I think, having it in mind that the purpose of you doing this is probably so that you are not needing to be present to be making money. And if you don't have that goal in mind, then you are probably going to be setting yourself up for another job, like being a physician, where you are needed, right? And so from the very out front, I was automating and just like investing my time into figuring out technology so that I don't have to touch anything. So at this point, I have 12 coaches and two strategy coaches, which is basically like sales folks, and then the webinar funnel, right? And I have just tons of like email automations off of that. But like, someone comes in, they get on the phone with one of us, we hit a button and their program starts. And that entire 12-week program is automated to them. And I think that understanding how to set that up so that you don't have to be intimately involved is really, really important. Because we have a habit of being martyrs. And
yes.
I think this is not, it's not the time to do that in the online world.
I love it. You're systematizing things. I mean, I've seen doctors who they do telemedicine, think it's going to be easier, but they just gave themselves another job. Like with concierge medicine is like, I would do not want to give my phone out 24 hours a day. It may sound great, but if you're still substituting time for money, you're kind of almost in the same or even worse position that what you're in. Wow. Lots of stuff that you got there. Now your employers, are they independent contractors, and are they virtual, or are they in Idaho with you? Other than your husband.
Yeah, the whole company is virtual. So coaches all around the country. A couple of them are here just because they've been with me from the beginning. They are independent contractors. Yep.
This is amazing. Thank you for giving us an insight into your business. No doubt you're taking over the world. So we'd love to have you on in future and just see how you're doing and growing. But if someone is listening to this and they want to get more information, where can they go? What's the best place?
Yeah, so the company's name is Wholist. So it's a play off of, cardiologist, gastroenterologist, using the whole person. So Wholist, WHOLIST. So our website is wholisthealth.com. On Instagram, I'm at Wholist Health. And on Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Curate Your Health, where we do kind of daily challenges and education. And I do tons of live training there. Free.
And that's a free group, or is that a paid group?
Free for the public. Yep. And then I have a podcast as well, anywhere you listen to podcasts, called Curate Your Health, where I interview other physicians and other experts around, health and wellness and empowerment and leadership. And it's really fun.
Awesome. And we'll have links to all of that on the show notes. Dr. Heather, thank you. I learned a lot. It was amazing. Just getting insight from somebody who's out there in the trenches, actually doing it, understanding the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur. It was really educational and really informative. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks, guys, for everything. As she mentioned, she just wasn't being stagnant. She was out there actually doing it. As always, guys, keep moving forward. All right, guys, and Dr. Heather has given us a special gift for those who want to take advantage of it. If you want to know more about lifestyle medicine, she has a course, as she's mentioned, just for physicians and practitioners. And what you want to do, and to take advantage of it and save $100, go to this link, and this link only. Go to bit.ly/bootstraplife. bit.ly/bootstraplife. We'll have it in the show notes. And it tells you everything you need to know about having your own lifestyle medicine practice. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the inside.